the riding lessons that I teach, the very first focus is always on correct riding position. Plain and simple, it's the foundation of your riding. Without it, you're at the mercy of your horse and gravity. With it, the door is wide open to any kind of riding that you'd ever like to do. So what is a correct riding position? It's a balanced position that lines up the head, hips, and heels in one straight vertical line. In this position, imagine if the horse were to just evaporate. You would be standing on your feet, not sitting on the ground or falling face forward. Being in balance is not just for the dressage rider. If you're going to jump, you'll need to be in a position we'll refer to as a light seat. And this too has you balanced with your hips over your feet. As we focus on your riding position, the subject can be broken up into three important parts: the seat, the legs, and the hands. It's really hard to exaggerate just how important the seat is to your riding. There's a saying that only a rider who sits correctly can ride correctly, and it's absolutely true. Every rider needs an independent seat. This means your seat moves with the motion of the horse, and you have control of that motion, and it's independent from the rest of your body. It's not that you're really sitting on your horse, but draping your seat and legs over the horse's back. In the saddle, your seat bones and pubic bone form a triangle. A good seat is upright, soft, and interactive. Here are some of the common mistakes. The chair seat looks pretty much like the rider is sitting in a chair. Notice how the legs are out in front and the seat is pushed back. The fork seat is when the rider's shoulders are forward and the leg is out of alignment. Another problem is the crooked seat. Here the rider is sitting unevenly in the saddle and causing balance issues for herself and the horse. The round-backed rider has hunched, slumping shoulders. This rider is working from a very weak position and is not riding with her core body strength. The opposite problem is when you arch your back and you can see this rider is perched in the saddle. How to make your seat better? Start with finding good instruction, and that often means taking lessons on the lunge. When lunging, your instructor is in control of your horse while you get to focus exclusively on the form and function of your seat. Once your seat is figured out, the next step is to move on to leg position. The two are obviously closely related. When you're sitting correctly, the hip joint is open, meaning it's operating as a ball and socket joint. This lets the leg fall softly around the horse, with the flattest part of the inside thigh flush with the saddle. Knees and toes should be pointing mostly forward, with just a slight turn of the toe to the outside. The knee has a bend, and the heel is positioned so that it's lower than the toe. The hip, knee, and ankle joints are loose and springy, as opposed to tight and locked. Problems with leg position often boil down to a stiffness in any one of these joints. A tight knee and inward pressure on the saddle is like a vice grip on the horse, blocking his motion, and it makes the lower leg nearly useless. The opposite issue is the knee that falls open and away from the saddle. Stiff ankle joints and tight calf muscles are often seen when a rider is balancing on the front of the foot. When you ride from the front of your foot, you tend to catch your balance with your knee, or worse yet, with your hands. Another foot problem is when your foot is too far into the stirrup iron. This makes you off balance, and it's hard to use your leg on the horse. Solutions? Return to the lunge line so you can focus on what your leg is doing. You can practice taking your feet out of your stirrups and seeing how long you can maintain the riding leg position. It can be hard at first, but walking, sitting the trot, posting the trot, and even cantering without stirrups will make your leg position better and more functional. Now we move on to how you hold your hands. The hands form the connection to our horse's mouth. This is a critical subject and needs plenty of time and attention. To get it right, your hand should be holding the reins in an upright position with the thumbs as the highest point. You now have a straight line from the horse's mouth to the hand and to the elbow. The reins should be held between your fourth and fifth finger and should be right up to the webbing of your fingers. The fingers are softly closed. The thumbs form a lock as you press the rein between your thumb and index finger. Probably the single most important mistake is open fingers. Without closed fingers, you can't communicate with your horse in any consistent way. You don't want to hold the reins with all your might, but you do want to have a good feel on the reins. To make the point clear, try riding with small rocks in your hands. If the rocks fall out, then you know you're riding with open fingers. Another problem is when we hold the reins like we're playing the piano. Piano hands make your elbows stick out, and your connection to the horse becomes insensitive and stiff. A fix is to tuck a whip or crop under your thumbs and try keeping the crop even and level, like you would if you were carrying a tray. Our wrist can do very funny things too. Anytime your wrist is locked or cocked into a position, there are going to be problems. The locked hand position can easily lead to a locked elbow position. If the elbow joint is locked, it's simply not moving with the horse's motion. Always keep your left hand on the left side of your horse's neck and your right hand on the right side. Crossing your hands over the neck gives mixed messages and confusing information. Once you've got your basic seat, leg, and hand position, it's time to get comfortable with a light seat. This position has lots of names: half seat, forward seat, two-point, jump, and gallop position. What's the difference? Well, they're all pretty much the same thing. Basically, light seat is taking your seat out of the saddle, putting weight on your stirrups and your thighs, and being light. More leg means less seat. Most people will identify a light seat with the world of jumping, and that's where it originated. But the light seat can also be used to help a rider's basic position, balance, and skill. The moderate light seat is used for just getting up off your horse's back. The more pronounced version is when the seat is fully out of the saddle. This version is used for grid work, jumping courses, and when jumping cross-country. How do you get yourself in a good light seat? Start with your heel. Generally, it's going to be lower than a dressage seat. Your knee should be firmly closed against the saddle, but not pinching into it. The hip is bent at an angle that roughly matches the angle of the knee. These two joints are dependent upon each other, meaning that the more one bends, the more the other one has to bend. The back is flat, and the eyes are looking forward. The reins are forming a straight line of contact from bit to hand to elbow. The most common problems are when you're either falling behind the motion of the horse or getting ahead of it. When you fall behind the motion, the lower leg is too far forward and the seat is too heavy in the saddle. When you're too far ahead, the lower leg is slipping back, the heels are coming up, and the seat is too far in front of the saddle. A good light seat means you're using your hip joint so that you can fold into the light seat with ease and maintain the point of balance over the horse. When we talk about the hip joint, there are two extremes that riders struggle with. One is when you're bending at the waist but not actually using the hip joint. The opposite is when you engage the hip joint to the point of locking the pelvis forward, causing the back to arch, and you become stiff and hollow.